All right, we're picking back up where we got the sleeper, finishing it up. We got the paint job on there. There's actually a kind of story that goes with this. One of our commanders in our outpost passed away last year around October, and he was a big Derby fan. So he would build these elaborate cars, and some of them were tanks and various things. But one of the things he usually done was incorporated Snoopy and at times Woodstock in his cars. And we kind of felt like it would be a good thing to do one last run for him. And I'm going to have somebody, they don't know it yet. When they show up to the race, they'll find out that they're going to run the car for Robert. They were one of Robert's champions, let's say. But we got the paint job on there. There's inscriptions on, well, best I can do. I'm getting shakier as I get older, putting this stuff together. But if you notice, there's some tape, and this is over the axles. This is part of it. So a lot of people make the mistake and they paint over that area. You're talking about, this is a point of contact where the wheel is going to be rubbing at some point, usually about the top of there. Now I can remove that real quick. To gently move this around. And so basically right at the top right here, in this area right here, the wheel is going to be, because it's going to be slightly canted. They're going to be towed out on the bottom. So when it comes into contact, it's going to come in contact right here. I don't know if we can see that right quick. Right there. That edge. So on the nail itself, it's going to come in contact right on the inside, on the bottom of one side, and on the top of the other. So this is going to come in contact with the side of the car, this area right here. And if you do it out right, it'll come in contact with that top spot right there. So it's all in how you place your axles. And this is still not even like any controversial thing. I mean, it's pretty well known. You can sit there and look it up on many different books and magazines and YouTube videos on there. But here's the thing, thinking with it covering up from paint. Okay, so as it's starting to go, friction heats up. Paint becomes, once it starts to warm up a little bit, and I know it's going down a track. It's going down like just a few sections of track. It's not going to heat up. After a while, especially if your paint's not dry and or if you got really rough paint, like you're letting your kids paint the car, not with like high quality spray paint or something like that, there's a good possibility that the paint's going to be rough. It's just best to eliminate that from that area. I mean, like I said, you don't have to tape off a whole area. You could probably even go smaller, just as long as you cover up that one area that your hub will come in contact with. So once I do this, I like to sit there and get everything lined up and there's times where I'll just use a roll of tape, masking tape, and I'll set it on there to where it supports when I start driving these nails in. Because lifting it up off the table, you can drive your nails into one side on a flat surface. But once you start flipping it over, you got those wheels on there, you'll start driving those wheels. If you lay it on the table and start banging on there, you start driving those wheels and lock them back into place there where they won't turn. Then you have to sit there try to ease them out. Can be done it many times. I've driven them down. Now, what I usually do is I have a feeler gauge. feeler gauge, basically about 24 to 25 thousandths thickness. And this allows me to leave a gap in between. So I just picked up this derby tool from Hobby Lobby, and trying it out. I've already put 2 cars together with it. One with the pre-done slots, and one where I moved the axles around and actually drilled holes for the axles straight through to keep them square to the car. Another thing is like when you look at your kit, look at the squareness to your block, and you want to check the squareness of those slots. Sometimes they're off. This stuff is not really cut that great. I mean, your block will come with various imperfections. The wood grain's not going to be running the best optimum when you're cutting it. You'll find out it's going to be rough. There are some people out there that would probably run it through a planer or a joiner, shaving just a little bit off to square everything up. I don't tend to do that. I usually tend to leave it up. And now, when you're doing this, you want to make sure in that area here, okay, you don't want any burrs sticking up. You don't want no splinters, no nothing like that. That's going to come in contact with your wheel at a certain point that you don't want. And that's pretty much on that. So, but this right here has a slot in here so you can slide it in, and it keeps your nail guided. If you have the pre-drilled holes, or not pre-drilled, but if you drill your own holes, you can sit there, and it has a flat side you can put up against there, but it gives you a gauge, which is pretty close to probably 25 thousandths, that was going to give that nice little gap for your wheel. And keeping, and I've been asked about this before, like, so in Boy Scouts Pine Derby, it's the thing of it is like people bend nails, tune them to a certain point. Like I said, we're not polishing the nails due to the rules that we have to abide by. And but you can, and I don't know if I can get any closeness with this, but if it focus, but these nails are not as rough as some of the Boy Scout ones are. I mean, they're not perfection, but they're and they do have a coating on it. It may not be chrome plated, kind of feels like it may be nickel plated. It's a little too shiny. Something along the lines, they're plated, I'm pretty sure, but they're hard as a rock too. So you're driving them, you'll find out. They are different in diameter. I got some Boy Scout kits, and I measured the diameter, and I can't tell you exactly what difference was, but these are actually a little fatter. So, matter of fact, hang on. Here's a regulation Boy Scout wheel. If you look at this, that tells you the difference there. I mean, that dude ain't going through there unless you drill that thing out, you know. Unlike this right here, where you got a lot of play in that. I mean, really a lot of play. And that's the thing, is you want that wheel to become in contact with the surface. And another bearing surface is the end of this right in here. This flat surface right there. Now, if you were able to polish this up for sake of your district, region, section, yada yada, or if it's just your church and y'all want to exploit that, you can. And you could take things like cordless drills, chuck it up, get things like various things like wet dry sandpaper, and you know, into the hundreds. You don't have to get into like 12 or 1400. There, if you're got the equipment and stuff like that, some guys take and cut. And I know in Boy Scouts, now I wouldn't with these technically. The way these are designed, and I'll get into that, is just cut slots to where there's like smaller bearing surface, less bearing surface, less friction, less, more speed you get out of that. So having a hard time explaining things, but that's all right. We'll get through it. But anyways, so if you were to cut this, you got a long shaft in this that's straight through. And another thing is like if right there where it comes in has a little rough spot. Sometimes that rough spot sticks up out of them, off of them. Most of these are kind of there, and you can get away with it. Another thing in ours, we can't polish it out. We can take the roughness out of it, as in if it was a burr, we could take that burr out. But as far as like polishing the wheel, shaving the wheel, lightening it up, anything like that, it's prohibited in our region. May not be in yours. And but I mean, really and truly, it's rounded. You're only, if you're shaving it, you're just shaving the weight off. You're not shaving it to less contact surface, unlike the Boy Scout wheel, which has this wide flat surface, and my guys will shave it down to where it's just a small fraction. And they even make wheels for these that are just basically almost like disc with a hub on them, and it works for them, but it's not our Royal Ranger official kit. So modifying and all that stuff. So I had years of doing this. I figured out a little bit of method, and I think it works. One, like I said, I call this a sleeper because the weights are hidden inside. And I had one of them that we took to competition. The last competition we ran, we took it to our outpost, and when we set up the track, we used it to test the track, make sure everything ran okay. There was no hidden bumps or anything, because we got a wood track. We don't have the fancy aluminum track, and after a while it gets a little warped or things get a little swelled up, and you got to do adjustments on it anytime you set it up. But I had our children's pastor out there, and he was checking it out. He picked up the car and he couldn't figure it out. He's like, well, it's heavy, but it has no weights on it. And I was like, well, the weights are inside of it. And he kept looking around. He looked in the back to see if I drilled holes and put those round weights in there, or looking for drill marks, or anything that would give sign. And if you look, I don't know if you can see it in this video, but there is that line. Of course, if you watch previous videos, when I get these posted up, that we put the weights, we hollowed it out, cut the angle, put the weights in, slap the top on. That's the sleeper. You don't see it. Granted, it really doesn't make a hoot for the most part, except for the fact that it is fully weighted and aerodynamic, and you don't have anything on the bottom besides these two grooves that's going to catch any air. So I've got some of them, like my sons and several other boys, I took a router and cut out the depth of the weights, and we used those tire weights for their cars recently and placed them inside there. So it creates a little bit of drag on there. Not much, not enough to be noticeable, but putting more weight on the bottom will create some more drag. Also, it may come across if you lower the body, especially when you drill your own holes, you lower the body a little bit. So if you put weights on the bottom, you got to watch it, because it will drag across the track. And if somebody's got a full-blown track built to specs, where the height is right at the maximum level of the groove, and not groove, but of the channel that it rides on. Now some of the fancier aluminum tracks, the walls are on the outside, so you wouldn't really have to worry about too much as long as. But I've also seen it at times when it's coming down and it gets right there at that curve and it starts to drag right there, and the weights are catching. Just it comes down really nice, and all of a sudden it just, and then picks back up and goes. Just the sheer momentum of it will keep it going, but it slows down for a fraction of a second, and that makes or breaks your race. I mean, it does. And that's your boy. You're looking at you going like, I thought you said this is gonna be fast, Commander. Well, no, it would have been if we'd done it right. So that's the thing is, I've been playing with this for so long that I figure I might have got it right with this. So to try to see if I can. I don't think that's gonna. But so prepping this up, I've got this jig here, and first thing you do with this jig, like I said, I'm just now using it. Most of the time I do it with a feeler gauge, and once I drive the nail in, and if you're doing it with a feeler gauge, get you a nail setter. It's or maybe like a 1/16 punch or something along the lines of that, because sometimes your nails will get off, and really and truly the best thing of it is instead of kicking it up at an angle, which you can, it changes your angle, and some of them do just fine like that with an angle to them, more of an upward angle. But really what I do is I flip it and I take that nail setter and I hit it to where those tires are squared to the body, but with a gap. With that gap, then they kick out just a little bit on each side. So you don't really need to set an odd angle to your nails. They can be straight. And you'll come into only certain points of contact with this part here, right here, and the same thing with here on one side, here in the inside. So, and I know it's like you're looking at it like, man, I can't see that on this video. But anyways, what you're doing is you're canting this just enough to where the angle, you're not running true flat with this, with a gap in there. If you didn't have hardly any gap, it runs true on that full surface inside there. Plus, either pushing up against this end or the head of the nail or the car itself. And when you do that, you're pushing the full face of that against that car or that nail. That creates more friction. So putting your nails in straight will actually give you and keeping it at a 25 thousandths gap will keep it where your tire cants out when it's sitting on a track, and gives you 4 points of contact that are smaller than just a full axle on the hub. I hope that makes sense, because so with this is pretty cool. So we put that groove in there. We can sit there, kind of start this out just a little bit. This opens up and keeps your hole, starts lining up. So we drill it down just a little bit and pull it out. Kind of rounds that out to where that nail goes in there pretty good. So we're going to go in here and do this one. Some of these are hard. These blocks are hard because it just depends on the part of the wood they get it at. And some of these are so soft that you could almost take and push the nail in with your finger to a certain point. You can't push it all the way in because you run across the harder part of the rings. But I'm going to push that just a little too far in. Anyways. But